Welcome to another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast. This is Dr. Bill Kanasky. This podcast is brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. With me, my very good friend, Larry Hall, trial attorney, has the best haircut of any other guest on the podcast ever. For 53 episodes, and finally, I get somebody that looks like my twin. Larry, how you doing?
Doing great, Bill. Doing great. Low maintenance is how me and you like to roll with the haircuts.
Oh, absolutely. But not everybody can pull it off. You have to have the special dome. You've got it. And it looks great.
Absolutely. You too, sir. You too.
Larry, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your practice, and your firm, just so everybody can kind of get you know. You and I have done several podcasts together for DRI, but this is the first time you're on my show. So let us know a bit about yourself.
Yeah, Bill, really excited to be here. So I'm with the Sandberg Phoenix law firm. I'm in St. Louis. We're a Midwest law firm. I generally cover Illinois, Missouri, and Kansas as primary responsibilities. I'm the head of our transportation group here at my firm. My practice is mainly devoted to risk management and defense of transportation companies and accidents. And we really assist them in all matters. My firm has about 200 attorneys, so we have a broad array of experience in business litigation, and things like that. So we really serve as outside general counsel to a number of motor carriers, advising them on everything from their real estate transactions to their business deals. And then obviously my component of it is risk management and accident defense. So really lucky to be with a great firm, and I rely a lot on the expertise that others have to offer.
Well, that's excellent. My first question, Larry, which is arguably the most important question, are the people of St. Louis still mad at the Rams? I'm guessing yes.
Absolutely. They are furious with Stan Kroenke. We root against all of Stan Kroenke's teams here, particularly the Colorado Avalanche. And we root against the Rams. And that is why the St. Louis Battlehawks were such a resounding success, is because we're ready to prove to the nation that we had a bad football organization ran by an evil person, and that we're a football town.
I had to go there. But listen, you got great hockey, you got great baseball. So, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about transportation law. Larry, so I was talking to my colleague, Dr. Steve Wood. We did a podcast last week, and I told him, I said, particularly for the trucking industry, in relation to COVID, I said, it kind of feels like the kickoff in the third quarter of a football game, meaning we've been through half of this mess. The trucking industry's kind of done what it can to redefine itself a little bit, particularly in public perception. And now we got the second half of this game going, in the second half. How do you think the trucking industry did in the first half of this game? Because when I compare it to what the healthcare industry did, I just personally think trucking could have did a lot more.
Well, what do you mean in terms of what are you talking about?
The public messaging, because I got to tell you, I think truck drivers are heroes, but I don't see signs, I don't see billboards, I don't see commercials, but I see signs, billboards, and commercials about the healthcare providers being the heroes. And I think they're both heroes, but I think one's getting a lot of positive press, while the other one, I don't see a whole lot.
Yeah, I think it's because, kind of the perpetual problem we have with trucking is that we work behind the scenes.
Yep.
When folks go to the grocery store and they pick out the toilet paper that's become a highly valued commodity, they don't think about that it took a truck driver working during the deadly pandemic to get it there. They're appreciative that the grocery store and the grocery store workers have it there, but I don't think that trucking, because it's not outward facing, gets the credit that it deserves for getting us through the pandemic. And Bill, I was thrilled to see the coverage that those first trucks got pulling out of the Pfizer facility with the COVID vaccine, because for the first time during this pandemic, I think that started to really, on a national front and on national news, show, look, folks, if we're going to get out of this pandemic, the trucking industry is the one that's going to get us there. And our logistics networks are what's going to get us there. And we have, and those heroes that drive every day, that drive during pandemic, that drive, whatever, they deliver the goods that we need to keep us living, and they're going to deliver the goods to get us out of this pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. The perception of the industry with jurors has notoriously been negative. And I think this is a huge opportunity for the industry, but particularly for trial attorneys like you. I did a very rough research, unscientific study around my neighborhood. And I was talking to neighbors and I'd say, well, what do you think about the trucking industry? And they would respond with, "Oh God, it's a dangerous business, and man, when I'm on I-4, I hate pulling up next to these trucks, and they're swerving into my lane, and you hear about these terrible, like it was just all negative." But then when I would ask a different set of people, well, what do you think about the trucking industry's role in the COVID-19 crisis? 100% positive. Meaning, I think going forward, and as courtrooms start to eventually reopen, I think it's going to be important for trial attorneys to tell the narrative and to attach it to COVID, because I do think, like you said, it's a really, really good story. And if trial attorneys don't make the most of that, I think they're really losing something with the jury. What do you think?
Bill, I couldn't agree more. I think that a lot of the impetus to make this type of change is on attorneys like myself. I mean, during voir dires, during openings, during witness questioning, even during deposed, for goodness sake. I mean, we need to emphasize the story behind these companies and what they do and why they do it. The plaintiff's bar and the trial attorneys spend millions of dollars and listen to speakers about storytelling.
Yep.
Storytelling. That is what they're about, because that's what juries want to hear in 2021. And as defense lawyers, we have to get better at telling our client's story, because it's a compelling story to tell. Every day, I get the honor and privilege to represent people that are essential to keeping this country running. And when we don't tell that story in front of a jury or during a witness questioning, when we don't get that story out, then we're doing the industry a disservice, because as we all know, the industry's under attack. They have targets on their back. And every day I look at lawsuits being filed, not because there's liability, but because you represent a big truck.
Yep.
And that's why they're being filed. And so how do we fight that? We have to become better storytellers. We have to tell about the companies that distributed the vaccinations. We have to tell about driver John from mid-Missouri that continued to work during the pandemic, delivering food to the grocery stores, even when it was dangerous and it was scary, and his wife would pack his lunch because he didn't want to get out of his truck. We need to be able to tell those stories. And if we don't tell those stories, then we as a defense bar are doing our clients a disservice, because we represent good people and we have to become better storytellers.
I totally agree. And part of this story, Larry, is I think you can use the healthcare comparison in your favor by saying our folks are just as valuable as the healthcare folks, because the healthcare folks can't do their job without us. I mean, you precede the healthcare folks, meaning they're putting the healthcare people on a pedestal. I get that and I understand that. And they're doing wonderful, wonderful work. But nothing happens without the trucking industry. And I think that would be a good part of the story to really educate jurors going forward.
Absolutely, Bill. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Now, another topic I want to come up, and I do want to ask you about the industry, but also just about the firm as well. And this has been a topic, we're kind of making a themed topic this month in January regarding mental health. Mental health has always been stigmatized. No one's ever wanted to talk about it. Now through the pandemic, you see a lot of people struggling at multiple levels. And as you can see, COVID, the pandemic does not discriminate really across. I mean, it's affected all of us emotionally, health-wise, physically, a lot of us economically, across the board. And so mental health issues, I think, are coming up both internally. I've heard about them at law firms. I've heard about consulting firms like ours, regular, banks, you name it. there's been a struggle nationally with coping with a lot of things. You throw in some political unrest on top of that, maybe the most stressful time in American history. I have noticed when I'm working with witnesses, a lot of witnesses have had struggles. What are you doing kind of personally and as a firm to monitor your truck drivers or your safety directors? What I've been doing is starting off these witness prep sessions, not talking about the file, but to say, how are you doing? How are you coping with this? Do you know anybody in your family get COVID? Have you had a financial? So I'm kind of doing this interview process with the witness to see if there's anything there. Because if I have a witness that's really anxious or they're really depressed, the prep session is going to be useless. What are some of the things that maybe you've run into in the last 8 or 9 months that you've had to deal with?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has been a great reinforcement for something, and regardless of what industry you're in, but particularly in the trucking industry, when you call a truck driver after they've been in an accident, whether it's in pandemic times or not in pandemic times, if your first question isn't how are you doing, are you doing okay,
Yeah.
then you're probably not doing it right. And I think that in our world of defense and analyses and things like that, sometimes we forget the human element, particularly when you're not in person, when it's a phone call or it's a Zoom conversation. I think the human element is lost. And I am amazed at how many times when I ask that question, how are you doing in response to this accident? I get a response where I'm doing okay, but I'd really like to know how that other person's doing, or how that other person that was hurt in the accident, how are they doing? Can you tell me that? And I think that humanizing it is so important to take care of your drivers and their mental health. When you're prepping for depot, are you nervous? It's okay to be nervous. Everyone's nervous. And Bill, one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten from a truck driver. I worked with this truck driver extensively. It was incredibly hard depot prep. We met 4 or 5 times. He did an okay job at his depot. During the first break at his depot, I put him on the verge of tears because he was not performing well. He was acquiescing. He wasn't sticking up for himself. And I kind of gave him a pep talk. And I said, you need to stick up for yourself. You have to do it. You have to do it. And I'm driving home that night at about 11 o'clock at night, and I get a text message from him that said, thanks for fighting your ass off for me today. And that's one of the most incredible rewards I've gotten as a defense attorney, to get a note from that driver about that. And, in the pandemic, whether you're a truck driver, whether you're in management, whether you're an attorney like me, for me, Bill, my office for the most part is now in my living room, and figuring out, just because my living room office is there, trying to find time to be a spouse and a dad. I've had to figure out how to, just because my setup's right there doesn't mean that I need to be in work mode all the time, and I need to be, taking care of my family and myself, to find time to decompress. I didn't prioritize exercise enough at the beginning of the pandemic. I used to go to group health or group fitness classes a lot, and those got canceled for a long time. And now I've transitioned to doing in-home stuff, which exercise for mental health is incredibly healthy and really helps me a lot.
Agreed.
And and it's work-life balance is always, for me, a continuing battle, like it is, I'm sure it is for you and professionals and truck drivers and everyone all over the world. It's a constant battle, but I think it's a battle you have to fight consciously. And I think you have to think about it and make sure that what you're doing in your day reflects your priorities in life. And I think that helps. As a firm, we subscribe to a service that offers counseling and things for mental health folks. And 2, one of the things we focused on is mentorship. So I try to check in, weekly or every other week with the associates. What are you worried about? What's going on that we need to address? Some of them at one point worried that the firm was going to close, that we were going to close our doors, and they had, some fears, and just getting out ahead of those and just saying, hey, I'm here to have an honest conversation with you about what you're worried about. And certainly, as a credit to my firm, my superiors and our management committee are incredibly open with the partners about what we're doing, about why we're doing it. And because of that, we've been able to fight hard through this pandemic and are still here and have kept everyone, and are hoping to continue to do that. But it's been a difficult time. I think it's a great conversation to have. We all need to have it on a daily and weekly basis with ourselves.
Yeah, because I think if because of it's really isolation. People have been isolated, and the only communication you have is, well, how many billable hours did you have this week? That's not helping anybody's mental health or how they are. But I do think it's more of a communication, with your staff, and also communication with your clients. And
Right.
so I do think I'm doing a podcast in a couple days with another attorney, and the entire podcast is about that initial meeting, with your driver or with your safety director that maybe you don't know, and how if you just jump right into the lawsuit, there's a lot of things that you're missing that can backfire on you, right?
Absolutely, it absolutely can. And I think what is paramount to prepare a witness for a depo, whether you're in your role, whether you're in my role, is that witness trusts you.
Yes.
And they trust you so much more when you find common ground with them. I have a little girl, I went to a certain college. We're a part of the trucking industry, or, just sitting down and just being a human with them and getting that trust. Boy, is that going to go a long way when you're asking them to lock in with you and prepare for a depo or focus during the deposition. And then, they have that personal buy-in, and they understand that you're there trying to help them. And I think that when you develop that trust, you just get so much more output that I agree with you totally. You can't start, if you jump into the facts of the case, you're going to be that person that came in to talk about that lawsuit, and you're never going to be Larry, or you're never going to be Bill, and they're not going to know anything about you, and they're not going to trust you.
Last question. So going forward, we're eventually going to get back into the courtroom. What do you plan on doing differently? I think the obvious, I would hope, is you're going to have to do jury selection. Voir dire and jury selection is going to be whatever you thought you knew about jury decision making, just put it aside, because I think a lot of us, we're starting from scratch because of this pandemic, because of these social issues in this country. I think it's rocked everybody, and I think your ability to ask really good voir dire questions may very well determine your fate in the courtroom. What do you think?
I agree absolutely, Bill. And boy, do I think that your conversations about the reverse reptile couldn't be more relevant than ever. I mean, if we are good storytellers and we can convince America that this is an essential industry, and that these drivers are needlessly going after trucking companies to try and recover these huge sums of money, and you don't have to tell a jury about the plaintiff's bar and their billboards and all that. They know, they see it. And boy, if you can use the reverse reptile and strategies like that to turn it as this essential industry is being attacked, I think that we can really make a lot of progress for the industry. And I've already started doing it in depots. And boy, it's amazing to watch the look on a plaintiff's attorney's face used to doing the reptile when they realize I'm doing it to their client in reverse. Boy, the look on their faces is interesting. And I really think you hit on the head. We haven't done a good enough job yet. Right now, I think there's still room to be made for how do we convince people that what truckers have done is essential and have helped to save people's lives, people's ability to eat and feed their families and have toilet paper, and certainly the vaccine. If we effectively tell that story, I think we can do a great benefit to the industry in terms of starting to change people's perception of the industry, how essential it is, and to start preventing these needless attacks on the industry from some of these plaintiffs' bar members who are not worried about liability or anything like that. Certainly there are accidents where the commercial motor vehicle drivers are at fault, and those need to be paid. But on these other claims, I think this is a great chance that shouldn't be wasted to reframe this industry, stick up for it, and change the perception of it around America. Because when you work in it, these are great men and women that drive these trucks and that work hard and that are family people. And the last thing these folks want to do is be involved in an accident. And it's the last thing. And if we tell that story in a compelling manner, we can change how trucking's perceived, and we can take the target off of the industry's back.
I totally agree. A lot of work to be done. Larry Hall, thank you so much for being on the Litigation Psychology Podcast. To our audience, thank you for participating in another episode, and we'll see you next time.